Hey everybody, Hoosier Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking episode 4 of season 3 of Arrow called The Magician. Uh, in general, I thought this was a pretty decent episode, but there are a few things about it that just don't quite work for me. And let's just kind of get some of those out of the way right off the bat. And first of all, the flashback thing in this episode continues to just demonstrate that Amanda Waller is one, a sociopath, and two, a goddamn idiot. Let's stop and look at this. the, Basically, she engineers all that stuff that happened on Lian Yu to kill China White. Okay, so basically, she goes through this elaborate song and dance that's basically only a few levels down in its elaborateness from the D-Day invasion to kill a high-ranking member of the Chinese mafia. Now, granted, that's probably not the easiest thing in the world, but Amanda Waller is basically the head of Argus, which is the CIA on steroids. You seriously can't mean to tell me that it takes something that crazy to kill a criminal? I mean, really, it wouldn't have been that much harder than to just slip an Argus agent onto the flight as a stewardess or something, and have them just slip some poison into China White's mid-flight meal. Seriously? Or hell, if you absolutely have to destroy the damn airliner to kill her, put a bomb in there. Have it blow up over the ocean and nobody's ever gonna find out. I mean, somebody like Argus can certainly fake a stupid mechanical failure on a plane. I mean, it's just dumb. And again, to kill China White? For God's sakes, Oliver was a dude with a bow and a computer nerd and an ex-army guy, and he took down friggin' China White. You mean to tell me that with everything that Amanda Waller has at her disposal, she can't do this? I mean, it's just stupid. I mean, if she'd been going after, say, Ra's al Ghul, and for whatever reason thought that he was on that plane, then okay, then I could kind of buy it. But China White? I mean, look, if this is a way for them to bring Kelly Hu back onto the show, I'm all for it. I think she's a very underrated actress, and I thought she did a really great job with China White. So yeah, totally bring her back. That's cool. But no, man, this is just stupid. And once again, Masayo's whole thing is like can't even. And Maseo, like really, the whole thing, Masayo, is you're just basically trusting your kid to make sure that Oliver Queen doesn't swipe his computer for a couple of minutes. Why in the name of God is there even a working computer in your house if Oliver is this desperate to get away? I mean, guess maybe he didn't have it there before, and once Oliver came to some kind of an accord, he figured like, okay, I can give my kid his computer back. But again, stupid. I mean, yeah, just in general, the whole flashback thing this episode was just painfully, painfully dumb. Anyway, aside from that, the majority of this episode is really, in a lot of ways, about Nyssa and her reaction to Sarah's death. And just like Laurel, she's just flipping out on an absolutely epic level and looking for somebody to pin the blame on. Laurel was willing to pin it on Komodo, and now Nyssa is willing to pin it on Malcolm. And of course, so were a lot of other people out there in the fandom. But Malcolm gives an extremely good defense of why he had no reason to kill Sarah. And again, people are forgetting. When Sarah turned around on that rooftop and saw the person who was going to kill her, she wasn't afraid. She didn't go into defensive mode. All she did was say, "What are you doing here?" Showing that whoever it was someone she did not consider to be a threat. And it makes no sense for it to be, as some people have said, Ra's al Ghul himself. Because it's Ra's al Ghul. She would have said something like much more respectful if it had been him standing there. So, yeah. Just Now, again, the whole thing in this situation is that Laurel and Nissa are just lashing out, looking for someone to blame. Now, granted, Nissa does have also some pretty compelling reasons to want Malcolm Merlin dead. He betrayed her father and the organization that she's a member of and has dedicated her life to. But even with that being the situation, she really just does not seem to want to face facts that, her anger was misdirected. She does not want to admit to anyone, perhaps even herself, that Malcolm really did not kill Sarah. And of course, that's a big contribution to her splitting with Team Arrow, and this sort of leading to the coming war between Oliver and the League of Assassins. But what's interesting is that Nissa really does show, however, that as irrational as she might be being in this situation, she's still also her father's daughter. She plays it cool with Detective Lance, who, did save her life when they were fighting the Mirakuru soldiers. And then she's very quick to sort of draft Laurel to her side. So it also, kind of puts a bit of a fracture in Team Arrow and has get somebody in Nissa's corner who's there in Starling City and just as compelled as she is to make sure that whoever killed Sarah pays for it, and is probably not as likely to be as picky about the whole situation in terms of killing that Oliver is. And again, even that scene at the end where she kind of gives Laurel a little advice on her training, it's sort of showing here that Laurel's probably going to receive some training in how to fight from someone beyond Ted Grant. Now, a lot of people have been saying, well, is Oliver going to train Laurel? Well, almost certainly he will at some point in the future. But wouldn't it be interesting if before then maybe Laurel picked up some training from Nissa? After all, if one Lance sister was good enough to become a League of Assassins member, and their father was good enough to save Nissa's life, well, Laurel might just be a diamond that needs some polishing. And let's see, let's kind of continue on through Team Arrow. Nothing in particular to say about Dig this episode. He did get a few lines about, he did get a nice line about, where he's like, I'm not going to take any offense at that line. And of course, Felicity was off guest starring over on Flash this week, so she just got her little funny line there at the end. Now, Roy. I like how they kind of, this episode takes some time to clarify exactly what's going to be going on with him and Thea, and they're very much just, okay, we're friends, and I like how Thea made it a point of saying, okay, that's all we're going to be as friends. And Roy is perfectly cool with that. And I like how, one, they made the new status quo between them perfectly clear, but they didn't waste a lot of time and angst on it. Roy knows he effed up and that he effed up badly, but he still really cares about Thea and wants to be a part of her life. And Thea does see that. So, she kind of lays down a few rules, and Roy is pretty accommodating on it. So, again, straight to the new status quo, not a lot of dicking around. I like that. And though I do have to say, I liked how Thea decided that Roy would probably not be suitable as a bouncer, and given Roy's temper, that's probably true. I actually knew somebody who worked with somebody who used to be a bouncer, and yes, it was a woman. In fact, she was a very, very short British lady who had actually been in the British military. And I even kind of mentioned to her one time, you don't really strike me as the sort of person that would work as a bouncer. I mean, didn't a lot of guys try and push you around? And she said, well, no, actually, a lot of times when I'd go over and try and deal with the situation, a lot of people would take a look at me, and just because I wasn't what they would expected, they'd sort of calm down and be more willing to listen to reason. I don't know, maybe well, whatever, it worked for her, I suppose. But anyway, so Roy's now back as the assistant manager of Club Verdant, despite having absolutely no real qualifications whatsoever. I mean, last I checked, before everything went to hell in season 2, he was a waiter. For a guy from the Glades who, at best, has a high school diploma, Roy's done a pretty good job of moving up in the world. And let's also keep in mind that Thea is like, what, 20 years old? No college degree, running a successful nightclub. And again, also remember, Oliver never even graduated from college. Still, he was the CEO. I guess it's not all about the sheepskin in Starling City, huh? Um, but anyway, the really nice thing was when Nissa kidnapped Thea. I liked how Thea knew how to hold back and not show off all those skills that she picked up from Malcolm, because well, that would have just been tipping her hand when in a situation where it really would have been of no benefit to her. She knew there was no way in hell her dad wasn't going to come for her, and if worse came to worse, she could probably get away. Well, at least that's probably what Thea thought. I don't think she quite understood, perhaps, who it was that she was dealing with. But in any case, points to Thea for being smart there. And let's see. Nope, that kind of covers it. Oh yeah, there's of course also the whole situation that Oliver is still not being completely honest with Thea. But then again, she's not being completely honest with him. And this is just going to lead to more blowing up in people's faces, because that's what happens on shows like this. Because that's what makes for good drama. Now, Oliver, again, his whole thing was mostly just being forced to realize that no, Malcolm Merlin didn't do this. And then, of course, there's also the whole holy shit, Malcolm Merlin is still alive. And Oliver takes it actually quite a lot better than he thought he would. I really expected Oliver just to completely and utterly flip out. But I guess Oliver's found a little bit more of zen since season 1, so we'll allow that. Although one thing I did notice that was when he was fighting Nissa, before Malcolm jumped in and it became a three-way battle, it looked to me like Nissa actually was winning that fight. So I guess she must have took being beaten by Oliver in season 2, and Oliver did full on defeat her in season 2, and really sort of tailor her fighting style to counter Oliver. I mean, but again, that's just sort of my read on the fight. It wasn't a clear cut. It wasn't 100% clear cut, but again, I would say that Nissa was pulling a win there. And then, of course, we come to Malcolm Merlin himself, and we learn that his League of Assassin nickname was, however the hell you say, the Magician in Arabic. And, of course, his name being Merlin, that's a pretty fitting nickname for him. But and if you're also familiar with the tarot, you sort of realize that the magician is all about a person who's about doing things. And Malcolm's a guy who doesn't let moss grow on him. Man, I need to brush up on my tarot. I know there's more to the magician card than that, but I can't really recall it off the top of my head. But anyway, as I said, I really like that scene where Malcolm points out, there's no damn reason in the world for me to kill Sarah. And then, of course, there's the whole situation of Oliver being forced to put Malcolm under his protection, and he only does that, of course, because one, Malcolm is innocent, but I think it's really more just the fact that he just doesn't want Thea's biological father to be murdered and have to put her through that again. So I mean, it's just a real emotional for Oliver, having to protect a man who is quite literally his worst enemy, but also the father of his sister, his half sister. And now Oliver has the League of Assassins declaring a vendetta on him. I mean, yeah, that's a tall order, and there's no clear way out of this one either. There's no one. The only way, I mean, even if he does, fight off some people that the League sends him, there's always gonna be more. And now the daughter of Ra's al Ghul herself is looking for his head, and as we learn, Daddy's coming to town to party as well. It's looking pretty bad. And of course, Quentin. Not a huge amount to say about him this episode. Just they continue on the idea that Quentin doesn't know that Sarah is dead, but he's got a bad feeling. So anyway, let's talk about two other things that this episode that really did bother me. One, okay, so they go to this. I guess it's supposed to be like a Zen Buddhist temple, Buddhist temple kind of thing in Starling City. Okay, Starling City is a large city. It makes sense that there'd be Buddhists there, and they'd probably have a kind of a place where they'd go to do stuff, or it might just be sort of like a Chinese garden. Okay, fine, well enough. And you notice that the guy who was supposed to be the monk, he had a kind of a Chinese given name and then a Western surname, and it mentioned that he was almost deported to China. Now, a person like that, yes, it is theoretically possible that somebody like that exists. Somebody with a Chinese mother and a Western father, born and raised in China, has Chinese citizenship. Yeah, that's possible, but it seems pretty unusual, or at least, something that requires a little more elaboration, at least in my book. And then when Nyssa goes and confronts this guy, or at least who she thinks this guy, and it turns out to be Malcolm Merlyn, she refers to the guy who she thinks is this monk as sensei, despite the fact that that's a Japanese term. Again, she is referring to a Chinese Buddhist monk using a Japanese term. Oh man, guys, I can't even begin to just the levels on which that is wrong. And I'm saying this as somebody who spent 3 years of their life living in Japan and has traveled in China. It's just like, how in the world do you F something like that up? How? And then, even worse than that, is when Oliver and Malcolm go and meet. Malcolm's all like, yeah, we're going to meet here, and it's all nice and public. Let's keep in mind, it is public knowledge that Malcolm Merlyn is the one behind the earthquake that, about 2 years ago, killed over 500 people in Starling City. Granted, and remember, Malcolm was never caught. As far as people know, he's on the. Oh wait, no, sorry. He was believed dead. They did mention that Malcolm was able to probably pay somebody in the medical examiner's office off. So yes, people know that one, Malcolm Merlyn is supposed to be dead, but two, they also know that Malcolm Merlyn was the guy that basically killed all those people. And yet, Malcolm Merlyn is perfectly content to meet in a large public place with dozens of people around to see him. Can you imagine if in 2003 Osama bin Laden decided to go and hang out in Rockefeller Center in New York? Now again, granted, people think that Malcolm Merlyn is dead. That doesn't mean that they magically forgot what he looks like. I mean, has to be the most infamous guy in the history of Starling City, and there he is, just hanging out with the other really, really famous guy from Starling City. It's idiotic. I mean, it really, really is. And yeah, I'm just gonna have to call it there, guys. This was not a bad episode. There were quite a few good things going on, but there are just some ideas and things going on here that are just stupid beyond words. And frankly, I expect a lot better from the writers on this show. Arrow's not a perfect show by any measure, but in my book, it's still one of the best genre shows on TV right now, and I look forward to it every week. It's my favorite show. But, yep, call it here. I'm gonna go play some video games. Yeah, Civilization Beyond Earth, baby, it's good. But in desperate need of patching. Desperate need. And with that, folks, I'm gonna finally call it here. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe, and of course you can follow me on Twitter at HoosierJedi. Till next time, take care and have a good one.